one of the things I've been learning also is that when people are in middle school or early high school, they don't always have the faculty to learn how to think about vision casting because they're so young. So they're not ready to think of big questions like, what am I going to do with my life, etc. But the problem is those questions, I'm actually hearing them more and more from high school seniors now. So there seems to be a problem in vision casting for young people, period. Like, most people don't know what they want to do with their life. So we should probably take a step back and ask, how can adults help children to figure out some of their direction? Remember what we talked about earlier? Make sure that you find your passions, grow in your passions. And Liam, thanks for demonstrating that with the song you sent. I'm excited to keep listening. So whatever your passions are, make sure you're investing in your passions. Because you only have one life. And I want to talk about that for a second as it relates to passion. Let's read John Quincy Adams' story for a second, and then we'll come back to finish off our day today. As I said, part of why I am hitting hard on the issue of life is because I don't get to teach a lot of these camps. After this week, we don't have a camp till the end of July. So I want to make sure that we are thinking about what matters. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at. Okay, so with that said, here's a short story from the life of John Quincy Adams. It comes out of a book here called The Third Education Revolution. That's the name of this book, written by Vishal Mangwaldi, who is an Indian social reformer of a sort. Like, he's very concerned about change in society. He said, the education of America's sixth president, John Quincy Adams, provides a great example. And actually, give me 1 second. I'm going to go back a couple of pages here. Each of the chapters is written by, specific people. This one is written by Stephen McDowell, I believe. Stephen McDowell, sorry. And here's where it goes. Let's go back. Okay, perfect. Here's what it said. The education of America's sixth president, John Quincy Adams, provides a great example. Adams' father and mother, John and Abigail, taught him at home until around age 11. As a 10-year-old, John Quincy knew French and Latin. He read the writings of Charles Rollins and other difficult works, and he helped to manage the farm with his mother while his father was away serving the nation. I don't know if you got the age. Let me read that again because it's actually making me question my world. At the age of 10, as a 10-year-old, John Quincy Adams knew French and Latin. He read the writings of Charles Rollins and other difficult works, and he helped to manage the farm with his mother while his father was away serving the nation. Letters from John Quincy to his father at this time reveal the level of literacy and reasoning skills his parents imparted to him. In one letter he wrote, I wish, sir, you would give me some instructions with regard to my time and advise me how to proportion my studies and my play in writing, and I will keep them by me and endeavor to follow them. This is like 1800, guys. There was no Netflix. There was no social media. And he's like, can you tell me how to use my time well, Dad? In a letter to his father on June 2nd, 1777, at the age of 10, John Quincy wrote, Sir, if you will be so good as to favor me with a blank book, I will transcribe the most remarkable occurrences I meet in my reading, which will serve to fix them upon my mind. What he's saying is that, will you give me a blank notebook so that I can take notes of the books I'm reading in the blank notebook? This is in 1777. At the age of 11, John Quincy traveled with his father to France. Yet Abigail used her letters to continue the education she had so well begun at their home in Braintree, Massachusetts. In June of 1778, she wrote, You are in possession of a naturally good understanding and of spirits unbroken by adversity and untamed with care. Improve your understanding by acquiring useful knowledge and virtue, such as will render you an ornament to society, an honor to your country, and a blessing to your parents. Let me read that again, and then put your name there and put this as part of your mission. She said, you are in possession of a naturally good understanding and of spirits unbroken by adversity and untamed with care. And then she says, improve your understanding by acquiring useful knowledge. How am I acquiring useful knowledge? How are you acquiring useful knowledge? Well, one of the things I need to do is I need to read this book again, or at least go through it. Okay, that's my assignment. And then she says, such as will render you an ornament to society. If someone came to me and said, Amos, are you an ornament to society? If someone came to you and said, are you an ornament to society? What would your answer be? Some of you would be like, well, I'm only 10. Well, are you sweeping the streets that look dirty near your house? Are you washing the dishes with diligence? Are you asking your neighbor, that lady who has a cane and is struggling to walk, if she needs help moving her groceries into her house? Right? Are you an ornament to society? Am I an ornament to society? And then he said, an honor to your country. That part might be a little too big. Like when you think of your country, that's huge. Like, okay, how can I help my country? Well, I just need to do my best in my sphere. But then the last part of what they said is, and blessing to your parents. That part is very practical to those who live at home. Be a blessing to your parents. So his mother told him this, okay? And there's a whole book. This guy here, David McCullough, he actually wrote a whole book. I'll just tell you a few books he's written. He wrote a whole book on 1776, so he's a historian. He wrote a whole book on John Adams. So there's a whole book on John Adams in 1776, if you want to read that. And then he has a whole book on Theodore Roosevelt, right? Mornings on Horseback. And then he has a whole book on the Johnstown flood, the Great Bridge, the path between the seas, Harry Truman. Truman is one of the presidents. We just know what happened in World War II, one thing, but people need to probably read more about Truman. Anyways, that's this guy. So we could read more about John Adams from this guy's writing. Now, notice that it's 1776, 1778 range, they're in France. So the US and France have some relationship happening, right? The French Revolution is about to, well, it's going to kickstart. There's a lot of stuff that is going to happen around this time in 1790 to 1800. Okay, so then the mother says, great learning and superior abilities, should you ever possess them, will be of little value and small estimation unless virtue, honor, truth, and integrity are added to them. Adhere to those religious sentiments and principles which were early instilled into your mind, and remember that you are accountable to your Maker for all your words and actions. John Quincy Adams' mother to him. In the same letter, she encouraged John Quincy to pay attention to the development of his conduct by heeding the instruction of his parents. For, dear as you are to me, I would rather you should have dear as you are to me, for dear as you are to me, I would much rather you should have found your grave in the ocean you have crossed than see you an immoral, profligate, or graceless child. I would rather basically not see you, now that's a little extreme, than me seeing you be an immoral child, she says. This home-centered, morality-based education that taught biblical methods of reasoning enabled John Quincy to go on to a remarkable career. When he was 14, he received a United States congressional diplomatic appointment as secretary to the ambassador of the court of Catherine the Great in Russia. He served as foreign ambassador to England, France, Holland, Prussia, and Russia. He was a U.S. Senator, Secretary of State, and the 6th President, after which he served 18 years in the U.S. House of Representatives, during which time he was a leader in the anti-slavery movement. Biblical education produced this man who served his country and the cause of God. So, what can we learn from John Quincy Adams' life? Number one, education is very important. It's good to know math. It's good to know science. It's good to know stuff. But it's also very good to have virtues. Back in the day, the way that education would work is that people would live with somebody else, or they would follow somebody else, and they would pick up habits and traits that are good for them from that other person. Unfortunately, education has actually deteriorated pretty bad in the day and age that we live in. What do I mean by this? Around 1890s, so around the 1890s into the 2000s, well actually let's just say into the 1900s, it's interesting that I'm listening to a little podcast that Jordan Peterson is doing with this guy who goes over education history. And around the 1890s, they needed factory workers. So education was basically built around a factory worker model. And we still do that today. We treat people like factory workers. The bell goes off, math, you go sit down, the bell goes off, you move. It's very passive. It's not, people are not driven, they're not taking ownership of their learning. That's the way education ought to be. So that leads us to inspirational mathematics. The education that John Quincy Adams and some of these people received was pretty top-notch, right? A lot of these guys, again, very young, did some amazing things. It's 2023. We have Google. We have the internet. And there's some of us going around saying we don't know how to do certain concepts. Not because we haven't applied our mental aptitude, but because we're lazy, right? So we need to reduce our laziness and increase our time in the matters that matter. I want to draw you a graph and then I'll end with inspirational math. Usually when you're born, you're like 0 years old, right? True or false? True. You start out at 0. Our education system generally is supposed to take you to about 18. And you're supposed to get a K-12 education during this window. Right about 18, people go to college or trade school, or they get a job or an apprenticeship, apprentice here, or they could go into the military. And very few would start very successful businesses at 18 and run them. You could start a business here. And then most people do that if they do the traditional 4-year route. So let's say somewhere around 22, they're done with college and so on. The years from 18 to 22 are very busy years. They're very busy. Like if you ever ask a college kid in church, most times pull them aside, hey, how you doing? Are you busy these days? Like during the school year, they're gonna be like, yeah, I'm busy. They're always busy. So this is not the time for certain skills that can be built to be built. So that means, and then from age 0 to like 6, most people are like still trying to figure out what is life, am I even alive, like what is life? They don't know, they're just playing, that's all they do, right, most of them. So from age 6 to age 18, right, from 6 to 18, is about 12 years. I was in 7th grade when I started reading books that mattered. I was in 7th grade. And today, I don't read as much as I did back when I was younger because, of course, life has gotten busier. But here's what's interesting. When I think of my life, those years from 7th to 12th grade, those books I read, which I actually journaled some of them, and I have the journals in my house, which is weird because I journaled them in 2004. But those books are what influenced the trajectory of my life. Isn't that interesting? What you do in middle school and high school can direct the rest of your life. Isn't that interesting? And yet, most middle schoolers I know are not even serious about life. So then it makes me wonder, we need to rethink what we're doing here so that people have success here. So how do we do that? In our current American math situation, if you were to take, this is the syllabus from 1st grade to 8th grade, okay? I have this. This is all we teach from 1st to 8th grade, the syllabus. So if you were to take everything we teach from 1st to 8th grade, you can do it in 1 year. So if you're here in 7th grade and you're like, oh, my math was terrible in 4th grade, it doesn't matter. Take 1 year and do it well. What do I mean by 1 year? Learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide, and do that well. Make sure that you keep refining that skill. Treat math as an endeavor of gradual progress every day, of learning, okay, this is my hole, get better at it and fix it. So, what I've done with Inspirational Math 1 is I took all of this and we're just gonna do it in 1 year, right? Then do your algebra and algebra 2 in 1 year. Then do your geometry and pre-calc if you can in 1 year. That's kind of my vision for that. Why are we trying to condense math and reduce waste? Because I want people to spend these years more productively, developing their skills, their talents, their abilities, reading books that matter, so that when they get here, they're not asking, what am I doing with my life, right? Now, it's gonna be hard for you guys to think through some of this, not all of you. I'm just saying it's gonna be hard for some people. You know why? Because we are so wealthy as a nation. We're so rich, it's kind of intense. We're so rich, we have different forks for different parts of our meal. That's how rich we are as a nation. Right? Have you ever been to a buffet where they're like, here's a fork for your salad, here's a fork for your dessert, here's a fork for your main course? Like, we're so rich, guys. It's unbelievable. When I grew up in Nigeria, I never saw someone with more than one piece of meat as the norm in general, ever. And then I came to Wisconsin, and they're like, oh, here's a cafeteria for college, you guys just help yourselves. Just like, what is going on here, right? Now, I mean, it's like, we have so much. And do you know what happens when you have so much? It makes you lazy. And I'm guilty, okay? This is me talking to myself. A lot of waste. We have so much food that is wasted in this nation. So here's what I want to encourage our young people. Make sure every day, ask yourself, how am I using my time? Like our friend, right? how am I using my time? What books am I reading? And how am I encouraging my society? So Inspirational Math 1 has an assessment. Now, of course, Liam and the older students don't need Inspirational Math 1, but I wanted them to see it so that they can be a guide. So if you ever have questions, go ask Mr. Liam. Say, hey, Mr. Liam, I have a question. Where do I go to find this? And he can show you. You should be comfortable using the textbook, which we're going to print, and you can just go find it, okay? Having a mentor, a coach, somebody that you look up to is a good way that you can be guided properly. Notice that John Quincy Adams was basically saying, can you guide me on how to use my time? Which is funny because I was just saying that we might just have to start helping young people figure out the direction rather than letting them figure it out themselves. Because clearly that method is not working. Okay, I could do a lot of math, but I don't want to right now because I'm looking at some of your faces and you guys are not ready to do a lot of math. So I'm not going to do a lot of math, even though I'm doing more of the STEM side of the French week. But what I wanted to establish was help you understand what inspirational mathematics is. Now, why is it called inspirational mathematics? Because I wanted to inspire people. I want people to be proactive. Let's write that word down, proactive. I don't want people to be passive. I don't want people to be apathetic. But unfortunately, that tends to happen when we don't put in the effort. So let's go back to our story from the Wright brothers. But before I do that, though, do you have questions? I'm going to take a seat and answer any questions. We can stop that. Sorry, if you can help me. Do you guys have any questions about anything, literally? Again, today's session is a little unique because I'm just